I am doing a slight rework of one that I did about 2 years ago here at North Texas PC Users Group, and I've retitled it "SEO is Still a Fool's Game." A lot has changed in the last 2 years, including one major change from the way that Google measures backlinks. But a lot has stayed the same, and SEO, if anything, is even more subject to the pile-on effect, which I'll talk about a little bit later in this presentation. Here's a short and very simplistic history of SEO. Once upon a time, there was no Google. I can clearly remember that. It wasn't all that long ago. Web search was kind of primitive. There were about a dozen different search engines, and none of them were very good. But if you wanted to show up in a search engine, all you had to do was stuff keywords into your website. And I remember getting really tired of having to go through search results that were thoroughly buried in garbage. And I wasn't the only one that was getting tired of that. The search engines were basically useless. Then came Google. And I remember when Google burst on the scene, they bought out the Deja News, which at that time was probably the best search engine that was out there, at least for Usenet. And they took over the entire Usenet archive, which at that time was a couple hundred gigabytes, which was a lot of space back in the late 90s. They saved the whole archive except for a few items that people explicitly requested deletion. And they managed to earn enough to keep going by running ads. They burned through a lot of venture capital to start out with because, well, hard drives were kind of expensive back then. Now, one of the most brilliant things that Google ever did was Gmail. Offered a free web-based email service with some storage. It came with about 10 megabytes of storage, and it was by invitation only. And you could invite your friends. You had a limited number of invites, and I remember that everybody was clamoring for a Gmail invitation. This stroke of marketing genius is what made Google what it is today. And then, I'm old enough to remember dozens of search engines, but a lot of people on the web now don't. Now, SEO, or search engine optimization, simply means getting ranked highly in Google. Google is kind of the 800-pound gorilla. Nobody bothers with any of the other search engines, even though there are a few that are arguably better, at least for certain topics. For instance, Bing, which is one that I use kind of heavily, is much better for searching for technical items. There are some other ones like DuckDuckGo, which have some other advantages over Google. But Google is still the biggie. And a lot of folks out there don't even know that there's anybody in second or third place. Bing is trying to overtake Google, or at least they were trying a couple of years ago. They found it a bit harder than they expected. The Google motto slowly morphed into, unless we think we can get away with it. It's been well demonstrated that Google's rules do not apply to Google, nor to a handful of its largest friends. And there's a very long but informative post that's still up on Viper Chill which I recommend that you read. In fact, all of the posts on Viper Chill are worth reading. They tend to be rather longish. Glenn Alsop tends to write posts that are about 7,000 or 8,000 words, or sometimes more. But he always goes into a very in-depth analysis of whatever he's covering. Google became the search engine, but it still struggled with getting good search results. They did learn how to recognize keyword stuffing, and then they started penalizing the sites that used it. Oh, except for their friends, of course. And for their own advertising. It was mostly seen as a good move. Google also learned how to use latent semantic indexing, or LSI. That is a way of doing optimization on your site by making sure that you are talking about or including phrases that would be common for the topic at hand. For instance, if you're talking about diabetes, you would probably mention things like Dawn syndrome and insulin and various other things that diabetics would recognize as being pertinent to the topic. Around the same time, they also decided that backlinks were important. Between these two improvements, the SEO industry was born. You could make a lot of money managing latent semantic content and backlinking if you knew how to do it, and it was kind of hard to do. So as a result, free traffic got very expensive. Google added more and more rules about how they did SEO, and it got harder to game the system. And it's still getting harder. The folks who depended on Google hired SEO firms to maintain their rankings. Google changed course several times. They decided that poor backlinking didn't really count. And then they decided to punish poor backlinking, which spawned yet another industry. And just recently, they acknowledged, several years late, that bad backlinks could be easily and cheaply weaponized. Basically, for a few $100s, you could attack somebody else, your competitor's site, and have him de-index with a bunch of crappy links from things like porn sites or other dodgy things. Up until this month, a competitor could get your site completely delisted for less than about $1,000 by hiring people to build links from things like drug sites and MLM sites and porn sites and other dodgy places. And in order to overcome that, you had to hire somebody to find those links and disavow them without any help from Google. For $1,000, it'll get you about anywhere from 5 to 10 million backlinks, bad backlinks. And it really requires some mechanical help to get over that. You're not going to go through and find all of them yourself. The return of the old rules was several years overdue. And note that Google can change its mind pretty much any time. Every time Google issues an update, at least some of the SEO strategies you have been using become invalid or work against you. Then you end up paying possibly the same people you hired to implement your strategy in the first place to have all that undone. And there's no way you can find enough time to do that yourself. It's kind of interesting. The SEO game, every once in a while I get a call from somebody who is doing SEO, and I don't have my sites privately listed, so my phone number's up there, and I'll get a phone call from somebody who offers to put my site on page 1 of Google. And I I kind of I have a Starkey response to that. I asked them what the most important service their firm uh, provides in SEO, in general, and they'll tell me that, and I'll type that into a search engine and do a search, and then I'll ask them, what is the name of your company? And I'll look through the first 2 or 3 pages of Google, and typically will not find the name of that company for the most important, what they consider the most important service they produce. So then I come back and say, well, obviously I'm doing a better job of SEO than you are, because you found me, and for only $30,000 a month, I will help you with your SEO. And that usually ends the conversation. Anyway, unless you can afford to play the SEO game at a level of $10,000 a month or more, you will lose money at it. Well, I don't want to play that game. I can't play that game. I don't have $10,000 a month to do that. I do have a opinion post there. If you want to make a note of that, I'm going to publish this on my website, so you don't have to furiously write that down. And I'll leave a link to that. So at any rate, this presentation is updated, as I mentioned, from two years ago. So what do I do for SEO? Well, I do a variety of low-level efforts. I post links on Twitter and Facebook. I have several Facebook fan pages. I try to make them interesting enough to be reposted or retweeted or whatever. And I don't post links on any of my other sites. Now, I do post same site links between pages because that actually is considered to be more important than other backlinks of sites that you obviously own yourself. Speaking of which, there's a big deal about private blog networks these days, and that's a real fool's game. All these folks are saying, "Oh well, Google will never find out about who we are or where those links are coming from." And the thing that always occurs to me is, okay, guys, who knows more about how the internet works than Google? The answer is nobody. I do a little bit of forum marketing. This is really time consuming if you want to do it right. And I only use branded links. That means that the link itself has information about the brand or the topic that I want to backlink to, not just a naked link. And I outsource most of that. I've talked a little bit about how I do outsourcing a couple of months ago. Then I wait. It takes a while. My SEO itself does not get much traffic, but I don't really care about that because they're much better sources of traffic than just searching and optimization. The current best source of free traffic is Facebook. And the second best is YouTube, which, by the way, is now actually it's been a Google property for 3 or 4 years now. Those could change. I actually make a little money off of the tweets that I make on Twitter too. So I would guess that would maybe the third best. The best free traffic sources now will not be the best for very long, and that's from a consequence of what I have named Lancaster's Law. Lancaster's Law, or the pylon effect. Should a good, reliable, and legal way to make lots of money ever be found, it will immediately be taxed, commissioned, inflated, odd-lotted, pointed, bid-ask differential, title insured, closing costed, restricted, termite sprayed, and otherwise stomped upon to make it as bad as all the rest. Actually, if it's really, really good, it will be made illegal by your competition who knows how to use the government to work for it. There's another link, another opinion piece that I wrote about that topic. So anytime something really good comes along, everybody in the internet marketing space jumps on it, and before you know it, it's no longer any good. What's best now? The cheapest and most dependable method of getting traffic is paying for it. And you pay for it either directly or indirectly. I hire a VA to do most of my SEO. I do a little bit of it myself. She only works 5 days a week, and I do the stuff on the weekends. And I use a little bit of automation stuff. Automation of your SEO is something that you want to do very carefully and limited. Using the paid version of Social Adder works pretty well if you're careful. I prefer not to use the paid version because you have more control over what happens to Social Adder if you do the non-paid version, which is kind of interesting. It does take up more time, but then that's what I hire Tony for. Buying solo ads, that's something I've only done a couple of times. I haven't had extremely good luck with it, but I do see reports that buying solo ads works very well if your back end is actually prepared for that. You need to have a buying funnel. You need to actually spend quite a bit on solo ads. The cheapest source of solo ads is Fiverr. If you use Fiverr, you're basically just throwing away money, because what you're going to get is really crappy traffic. Probably the best is building and selling your own information product. I've got one sort of halfway baked, but I haven't been able to get a whole lot of marketing done with that. I probably will, but I just haven't gotten around to that yet. One of the reasons that I haven't made a fortune at internet marketing is because I have a really good job that I enjoy, and I'm not really all that motivated to quit. Let's see, you can even buy traffic directly from Google. Just be aware that unless you spend somewhere north of $50,000 a month on Google, you're not really a customer, you're just their property. And I don't have that much money, so I'm not going to do that. You can build a list at zero net cost. And there's a product that I recommend, and I recommended that last time, except the price has gone up. Price was $17 2 years ago. It's now $27. And it's still a pretty good deal. That's one of Sarah Starr's things. Another one, well, she has more expensive products, and she has some other freebies that you can find as well. I guess I should link to some of those in the article. There are some bonuses with that product that I think that are even more valuable than the basic product. So when you go in and pay your $27, be prepared to come up with another 50 or so for the various bonuses that she will offer as her one-time offers behind that. Building a list is the single most important part of internet marketing, and I regret not starting sooner, and I regret starting the wrong way. I built a fairly substantial list that basically wasn't worth much. Back to Social Adder. Getting a paid account is the easy way. But if you get too many links on your site, it's unlikely to do you any good. Nowadays, it probably won't hurt you. It'd just be a waste of money. Personally, I limit my backlinks for any given site to a maximum of about 30 through Social Adder. I get other links via Twitter, Facebook, and so forth, and forum marketing. Instead of doing a paid account of Social Adder, write articles and post those on Easy in Articles. Easy in Articles is an interesting site. They enforce a rather interesting level of quality control on articles. There are a few that don't really work for me, but in general, Easy in Articles is a good source. You are allowed to have one branded link to your own site, but then you can go and liberally backlink those articles directly to Easy in Articles, because Easy in Articles spends enough money on Google that they're one of their friends, and nobody will be looking at the quality of the backlinks as a result. Likewise, backlink sparingly to forum pages where you hang out and where you are active. Now, even though I recommend that you get the free version of Social Editor, they do have one paid service I recommend, and that is to pay them about $20, it may be more now, to set up all your social sharing sites. That's kind of the weak link. If you set up your own, it'll take you probably 8 or 10 hours to do all of them, and you'll end up having to spread that out over about a week of constantly going back and checking to see if those so-called Web 2.0 social sharing sites are still viable. Okay, in conclusion, if you depend on Google for anything important, it's only a matter of time before you get screwed. And what works now probably won't work, next month. Be careful with backlinking. You want to stay under Google's radar. And generally, free traffic costs you more than paid traffic.